Hi, Matt with etrailer. Today we're going to be talking about the steel Flint goods Hitch Cargo Carrier on the 2023 Ford Expedition Max. Now this is going to be a solid option if you need to carry any additional gear for maybe when you're going camping, just kind of save room on the inside of your vehicle. Or you're carrying anything with a lot of spillage, kind of like any concrete or mulch, things you don't want inside of your vehicle. It's also going to have a pretty high weight capacity of 500 pounds. Even with me standing in it, I'm about 245 pounds. It barely dropped, so our vehicle is going to work very nicely with it. As for its construction, it's going to be constructed from a steel with a black powder coat finish on it. That steel is going to make it very sturdy, and that finish is going to help it be more weather resistant. It's also going to be great for if you need to tie anything down. So whether if you have straps or any bungee cords, you'll be able to use a lot of points to tie anything down. Even these thinner points are going to work just fine. Now, I will note, if you have anything with metal hooks on it, just be mindful when you do put them on that they could kind of slide around and scratch off that finish. We're also going to have these reflectors on the back of it. Those reflectors are going to help it kind of for more of a security measure so no one gets too close to your vehicle. As for our size of what we can kind of hold inside of it, if I measure our width, that's going to be 51 3/4, and our length is going to be about 17 1/4, and the height or depth is just going to be slightly over 4 inches. So that's just kind of something to keep in mind of what you can hold inside of here. As for your hatch access, you can stack things up to about a little bit under 15 inches before you're going to have any interference with your hatch. I'd actually recommend keeping it below that just slightly, just so it doesn't interfere with your license plates at all. It might block your backup camera just a little bit, but just slightly. But your taillights and back window won't be obstructed. As for how it's going to interact on the outside of our vehicle, it's going to stick out just about 24 inches from the back of the vehicle, which isn't too far at all. But since this is a larger vehicle, I just kind of be mindful if you are in any tight spots like a parking spot or parking garage. And as for the distance from the ground, we're going to have just about 19 1/4. So that's just something to keep in mind. You're going to have a lot of clearance. I wouldn't really be too worried about if you're going up any steep hills, especially even with this fully loaded. This barely went down even with me in it, so I think that's just going to be fine. As for how it's going to connect to our vehicle, we're going to have this 2-inch shank that installs to a 2-inch hitch receiver. And we're going to have this bolt that goes through with a nut on the very end. And that nut's going to be a 3/4. So kind of make sure you have a socket wrench for that. And what that's going to help do is prevent this from wobbling or rattling. Now we're still going to get a little bit of rattle. The majority of our rattle is going to be just from up and down. But from side to side, it's going to be just fine. But overall, I think this is going to be a solid fit for our vehicle. If you just need something for that extra gear, it'll do you just fine. Now, if you want something that's going to save you a little bit more room, something that you don't want to take off a lot, I'd recommend a Kurt Hitch Cargo Carrier. It's going to have a fold-up feature to it. It's going to save you a lot more room without having to take it off a lot. But if you're not too worried about that, I think this is going to do you just fine. If you liked everything you saw today, that was just a look at the Flint Goods Hitch Cargo Carrier on the 2023 Ford Expedition Max.